Admiral Zethkar's 6 arms spread wide in what his species considered a gesture of absolute dominance. The crystalline structure of his exoskeleton caught the harsh lighting of the command bridge, casting rainbow fragments across the tactical displays that showed the pathetic human fleet, if it could even be called that, floating helplessly before his armada. "Attention, primitive mammals." His voice boomed across all frequencies, translated by the ship's AI into the crude syllables the humans called language. "This is Admiral Zethkar of the Hegemony Third Fleet. You are completely surrounded and outnumbered 50 to 1. I demand your immediate and unconditional surrender." The human vessels were laughably small compared to his dreadnoughts, where his flagship Inevitable Conquest stretched 12 kilometers from bow to stern. Bristling with plasma cannons and reality-warping weaponry, the largest human ship barely reached 2 kilometers. Their technology was primitive: chemical rockets, kinetic weapons, and what his sensors mockingly identified as nuclear fusion reactors. It was like watching children play with wooden swords while adults wielded antimatter blades. The response came from the lead human vessel, its hull scarred and patched, clearly having seen better days. A single voice, calm and steady, speaking in that peculiar human dialect called English. "Admiral Zethkar, this is Captain Sarah Chen of the UES Defiance. I appreciate the introduction, but I have to ask, surrender of who exactly?" Zethkar's mandibles clicked in what passed for laughter among his kind. These humans were either incredibly brave or impossibly stupid. Given their species' reputation, it was likely both. Of your fleet, obviously. Of your pathetic excuse for warships. Of your lives, if you value them. There was a pause. Then, to Zethkar's complete bewilderment, the sound of human laughter echoed across the comm channel. "Oh, Admiral." Captain Chen's voice carried an edge of something that made the hair on Zethkar's sensory stalk stand upright. "I think there's been a fundamental misunderstanding about who exactly is surrounded here. What are you?" The tactical display exploded into chaos. Sensor ghosts that had been dismissed as cosmic debris suddenly blazed to life with engine signatures. What the hegemony computers had cataloged as asteroids and space junk revealed themselves to be human vessels, hundreds of them. They had been drifting dark and cold, their heat signatures masked, their electronics silent, scattered throughout the system like seeds waiting for spring. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was when Zethkar's sensors started detecting the real signatures, the ones that had been hiding behind the decoys, the ones that made his blood freeze in his vessels. "Impossible," he whispered, watching as ship after ship materialized on his screens. These weren't the crude vessels he'd been tracking. These were sleek, predatory things that seemed to bend light around them. Their energy signatures were off the charts, their weapon systems completely unknown to hegemony databases. "See, Admiral," Captain Chen continued conversationally, "humans have this funny little habit. We're really good at learning from our mistakes. And about 6 months ago, your hegemony made a very big mistake." Zethkar's primary mind raced through the reports. 6 months ago, the hegemony had encountered human forces at the Kepler station. It had been a massacre for the humans. The hegemony had celebrated their easy victory, their superior technology, their overwhelming force. "You attacked our science station." Chen's voice had gone cold now, professional. "Killed 3,000 researchers. Men and women whose only crime was studying nebular formations and cataloging star systems. You called it a demonstration of hegemony superiority." The human fleet was moving now, but not in any formation Zethkar recognized. They flowed like water, like a living thing, each ship anticipating the movements of the others with supernatural precision. "What you didn't know, Admiral, is that those researchers, they weren't just scientists. They were engineers, physicists, weapons designers, and they were working on something very interesting when you murdered them." Zethkar's tactical officer was screaming reports that made no sense, energy readings that violated known physics, weapon signatures that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, and worse, much worse, his own ships were beginning to experience system failures. You see, humans have been playing with something we call quantum entanglement for a while now. Turns out if you quantumly entangle the base particles of every electronic system in a ship's hull, you can do some very interesting things to enemy vessels when they get close enough. One by one, Zethkar's dreadnoughts began going dark. Not destroyed, disabled, their weapons offline, their engines dead, their life support failing. The mighty hegemony Third Fleet, terror of a dozen star systems reduced to floating scrap in the span of minutes. The really beautiful part, Chen continued, is that we didn't even need to fire a shot. Your ships are doing all the work themselves, Admiral. Quantum cascade failure is such an elegant weapon, completely undetectable until it's far too late. Zethkar's flagship shuddered as its primary systems began to fail. Emergency lighting bathed the bridge in hellish red, and the air recyclers wheezed to a stop. Now then, Captain Chen's voice carried clearly through the dying ship's speakers. About that surrender demand of yours. Through the main viewport, Zethkar could see the human ships moving closer, their weapons trained on his helpless fleet. But it was the message scrolling across his personal display that truly drove home the hopelessness of his situation. Memorial Armada, Kepler Station Research Facility, in memory of 3,000 souls. Vengeance is a human word. I'll ask you one more time, Admiral. Chen's voice was deadly quiet now. Who exactly did you think was going to surrender? As the first human boarding shuttles began their approach, Zethkar finally understood what the rest of the galaxy had been trying to tell the hegemony for years. Humans weren't just another species to be conquered. They were something far more dangerous. They were something that remembered,